对不起，我不会汉语，所以我要用英语说。Thank you very much, Venerable Yifa and the organizers, for organizing this event. I'm primarily a Buddhist philosopher, but I have interest in broadly about the role of technology and how the potential contributions that Buddhism can serve as a resource for thinking about new technologies. As was mentioned earlier, Buddhism has been very friendly with technologies in the past. As you know, the first dated printed book was printed here in China, the Diamond Sutra. So print culture, book culture, this technologies of the world owe a debt of gratitude to Buddhism. And AI in particular is very interesting in light of Buddhism. Buddhism is there's no central self, anatman, as Professor Hubbard mentioned. There's a collection of aggregates, right? The 5 aggregates of form, feeling, perception, formations, and consciousness. And as we'll see later today about robotics and machine learning, that without any central self or core, Buddhism can offer a model for thinking about the developments of intelligence and intelligent machines. Of course, the question is the mind the self? Is the mind different from the self? Is the mind the brain? Is the mind different from the brain? And whether or not artificial intelligence is just dealing with the first skandha, the rupa skandha of material form, or is it dealing with the whole purview of mind and body, mind and matter. So Superman, I think, is emblematic of like the fulfillment of human potential, at least in science fiction, a lot like the Buddha, and also this ideas of singularity of this post-human or transhuman age, where there's the potential that is offered by machines that outsmart humans. And so I wanted to draw upon some points that show some problems for thinking about artificial intelligence and developing artificial intelligence, as well as potentials that it holds. And so the first, the structure of what I want to talk about is cognition or mind, another word for mind, in terms of 4 categories that complexify or make complicated the idea that the mind is simply in the brain or is simply representable in neural correlates of consciousness. So the first is embedded consciousness. Another word for this is situated cognition, how cognition happens in an environment. Next, extended cognition, how cognition extends beyond the confines of the brain and the body as well. Although the body itself is very important, as Professor Hubbard mentioned, and enactive consciousness, how cognition is enacted in performances. So I'll quickly go through these. So for the first, the embedded mind, context matters. So there was a couple studies, only one of them is coming up here, the reference of how your moral judgments are more severe when you're asked to fill out a form and make a judgment on a person's behavior when you're in a messy office, given a chewed up pencil, versus when you're in a clean office. This is not my office, by the way, but I think intuitively we have this sense of space, places being clean and affecting our cognition. But this is something I think that presents a challenge to programming robots or machines to mirror our experiences. Maybe we don't want to mirror our experience of the world or our cognition, but this is just an issue. Another example I mentioned, if you're holding a warm cup of coffee like Professor Hubbard, you're likely to experience the people you're with as warm. versus if you have a cold drink, your experience of another is less empathetic, less warm. So these types of the situated nature of cognition has a has a role to play, and where we direct our attention, it also has a role to play in our experience of the world. So next is the extended mind, the second of our 4 E's, and Yogacara Buddhism in particular is a good resource for thinking about the mind is not simply just locked into your head. It's not held within the brain or within the skin encapsulated ego, but extends. And we saw the example in one of the earlier talks this morning of consciousness only, another important Buddhist tradition brought by Xuanzang that was mentioned earlier. And I like to think of what this means with the example of like a rainbow. So the appearance of a rainbow is not out in the world, right? Because there has to be a configuration. You have to be looking at the light has to be refracted against something, and like you have to be standing and looking in the right direction, 40 to 42 degrees. But the rainbow is not all in your head either, because there is this configuration. So it's neither outside nor inside, but in this interrelation. And we have this in Buddhist philosophy, Buddhist texts of the sense organ, the sense object, and the consciousness. And there's this interplay that creates the world. This is a picture of a selfie from outer space. Zupai, I believe, is the Chinese for it. I'm thinking of an American comedian, Demetrius Martin, just having the globe, a picture of the globe, and said that this was a self-portrait from space. So when we look at the nature of the extended mind, we can think of also like prosthetics, when artificial limbs or implants that become part of our cognitive apparatus, our sensory motor system, even riding a bicycle. We extend our cognitive maps beyond our skin. And again, this is something that provides a challenge and an opportunity for thinking about machine design and artificial intelligence. But primarily, since the topic of this session is embodiment, I want to say a little bit about embodied mind. And Professor Hubbard had mentioned a bit about this earlier, how if we think from an evolutionary biological perspective, karma is what kind of binds us. Our bodies are repositories of our karma and actions and habit patterns that create problems for us in the world. And we're wired, so to say, to experience the world in a certain way, like this fight or flight syndrome, for instance. And also, our perceptions are deceptive. So for instance, you can say optical illusion where A and B are actually the same color. If you remove the background, these are actually the same color, but we perceive them differently. And there's the link is too low, but there's a link to several optical illusions where you can remove like the context or contrast that really shows you that what you perceive is an illusion. There are also not just visual illusions, audio illusions, and unfortunately we don't have the YouTube. There's a McGurk effect that when you see someone moving their lips in a certain way, you hear something different, rather than if you close your eyes and you don't watch that. There's also inattentional blindness, or also known as change blindness, that we don't notice things based on our habits or modes of perception. So for instance, due to this flickering, there's a change, a pretty big change happening. So does anyone see the change in these two images? Does anyone not see the change? So it's this if you see this. It's a fairly big engine that is missed due to our habits of perception. So I think Buddhism brings a lot to the table in terms of the illusory nature of perception. Perception, the content of our perceptions are illusory. Another example of this, which has been the subject of a study at Harvard, implicit bias. And in this study, you're asked a question whether you are prejudiced against particular races. If someone has darker skin or lighter skin, or are you prejudiced against women versus a man, or different sexualities or different body types. And so you answer the questions, and then they give you a test. It's based on speed, your immediate reaction before you can think, at least reflectively. And associations like good, and you have to hit the left bar, and then doing this very quickly. And what comes, the outcomes of these tests, if you haven't done it, I highly recommend it because it tells you something. Through the machine, it can tell us, that it's a real opportunity for learning about our own perceptions and misperceptions and our own failure to identify our own implicit attitudes, not just our explicit attitudes that we are cognizant of, but our implicit ones that are under the surface, our karmic habits, so to speak. But very shockingly, or a lot of people are very shocked. I was very shocked that that I scored with the scores on these tests, because what you say what you believe and how you are is quite different from how you are when you're in these snap decisions. One more example I want to give, and this is a story, and I hope this translates. And if you've heard this before, please don't answer out loud. But think about this question I'll ask you. So a father and a son are driving down the road, and they get into a terrible car accident. And the boy's father is killed. And so the ambulance arrives and rushes the boy to the hospital. And they said, this boy needs to see a doctor and needs an operation immediately. And they take him to the doctor, and the doctor sees the boy and says, I can't operate on this boy, he's my son. So how is this possible? Does anyone have an answer? It's the mother. But it's for a lot of people, even female doctors, will embody this bias. I think this is something that potentially machines can help us to make explicit or implicit biases, but we also have to be careful not to embed our biases in the machines that we design, and so they become perpetuations of our karma and our bad karma. So I think technology is an extension of our psyche, our minds, our bodies. So I think intention is very important. Ethics are very important. I didn't get to the last E, but this inactive cognition, where just quickly, there's also another, at MIT, another test where people are asked, right, would you kill one person in order to save 5 people? And people say, yes, this is known as the trolley problem. But if you have to push a fat man onto the road to block the trolley, to not kill those 5 people, then people have changed their answers. And this moral machine identifies questions based on, would you run over an elderly woman, or would you rather kill yourself? Or would you rather run over the school bus, or the same number of people that are older? What if someone's a criminal? And it's based on these responses. They're compiling these responses to have an ethical response to like self-driving cars, because the ethics of killing yourself. Do you want a car that will kill yourself if in order to save like your neighbor? So there's a lot more to say here, but in 15 minutes I think I should stop. Thank you very much.